3 years ago, I thought I had found my perfect match. Marcus was everything I believed I wanted in a man. Successful, charming, and seemingly devoted to me. He took care of everything, paid all my bills, and showered me with attention that felt like pure love. I was so grateful to have someone who wanted to protect and provide for me. That night, at our engagement party, surrounded by family and friends, I felt like the luckiest woman alive. I had no idea that in just a few hours, I would discover the devastating truth about what he really thought of me. Before I share what happened that night, let me know where you are watching from and hit that like button if you have ever felt completely blindsided by someone you trusted. Now let me tell you about the moment that changed everything. I met Marcus at the law firm where I started working right after college. He was 8 years older, already established in his career, and had this confidence that drew me in immediately. I was fresh out of school, struggling to make ends meet on my entry-level salary, when Marcus stepped into my life like a knight in shining armor. Our first date was at this expensive steakhouse downtown. I remember feeling so out of place looking at the menu prices and internally calculating how much of my paycheck each dish would cost. Marcus noticed my hesitation and gently took the menu from my hands. He ordered for both of us, assuring me that everything was his treat. That gesture made me feel so cared for, so special. As our relationship progressed, Marcus naturally began taking over more of my financial responsibilities. First, it was dinners and entertainment. Then he insisted on paying my rent when I mentioned struggling to make ends meet. Before I knew it, he was handling my car insurance, groceries, even my student loan payments. He would wave away my protests with a smile and say, "Baby, let me take care of you." That is what a real man does for his woman. At first, it felt amazing. I had never experienced that level of security before. Marcus would pick me up from work, surprise me with expensive gifts, and plan elaborate weekend getaways. He cooked dinner for me almost every night, always making sure I had everything I needed. My friends were envious of how attentive he was, constantly commenting on how lucky I was to have found someone so devoted. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to shift. Marcus started asking more questions about where I went, who I talked to, what I did during my lunch breaks. If I mentioned grabbing drinks with coworkers, his face would tighten slightly before he would suggest we stay in together instead. When I wanted to visit my college friends in the neighboring state, he would find reasons why it was not a good time or offer to plan something special for us that same weekend. He began making subtle comments about my job, suggesting that I did not really need to work so hard since he could provide everything we needed. When I protested that I enjoyed my career, he would nod supportively, but then add, "I just worry about you stressing yourself out unnecessarily. I make enough for both of us." My social circle gradually became smaller as Marcus monopolized more of my time. He did not outright forbid me from seeing friends, but he had a way of making me feel guilty for choosing them over him. He would plan romantic surprises on nights when I had plans with girlfriends, or he would look genuinely hurt when I mentioned wanting to spend time with anyone else. The engagement party planning process was entirely Marcus's vision. He selected the venue, a beautiful rooftop space overlooking the city that cost more than I made in 3 months. He chose the catering menu, the flowers, even the invitation design. When I tried to contribute ideas, he would listen politely before explaining why his choices were better. He wanted everything to be perfect, he said, because this was our moment to show everyone how happy we were together. He insisted on buying my engagement party dress, personally taking me to a boutique where he knew the owner. As I tried on different options, he would shake his head at my preferences and guide me toward his choices. The dress he selected was beautiful, but not really my style. It was more conservative and formal than what I would normally wear. When I mentioned this, he wrapped his arms around me and said I looked sophisticated and elegant, exactly how his future wife should look. The morning of the party, I woke up with an inexplicable sense of anxiety. Everything should have been perfect. The venue was booked, the dress was hanging in our closet, and Marcus had been more excited than I had ever seen him. He kept talking about how proud he was going to be showing off his fiancée to everyone who mattered in his life. But something felt off, though. I could not put my finger on what exactly was bothering me. Marcus was practically bouncing with excitement as he got ready. He spent extra time on his hair and cologne, constantly checking his appearance in the mirror. He kept making comments about how everyone was going to be so impressed with us, how we were going to be the perfect couple that everyone envied. His enthusiasm should have been infectious, but instead, it made me feel like I was preparing for a performance rather than celebrating our love. When we arrived at the venue, the space looked absolutely stunning. Marcus had spared no expense, and every detail was flawless. The flowers were arranged perfectly, the lighting was romantic, and the view of the city skyline provided a breathtaking backdrop. Guests began arriving soon after us, and Marcus immediately went into host mode, greeting everyone with the energy of a politician at a campaign event. I watched as Marcus introduced me to his colleagues, friends, and extended family members I was meeting for the first time. What struck me was how he talked about me in these introductions. He would put his arm around my waist and describe me as my beautiful fiancée or my gorgeous girl, but rarely mentioned anything about my personality, my career, or my interests. Everything was about my appearance or how well I took care of him. To his business partners, he would say things like, "Is not she stunning, and she keeps me so well fed and happy." To his college friends, it was, "Look at this angel. I am the luckiest guy alive." While these comments seemed complimentary on the surface, they made me feel like a decorative object rather than a person with my own identity and accomplishments. The party was in full swing when I found myself talking to Jessica, the wife of one of Marcus's law partners. She was a fascinating woman who ran her own marketing consultancy and had traveled extensively for work. As we chatted, she told me about her recent business trip to Japan and how her husband had been so supportive, even helping her prepare her presentation materials. "David and I are real partners," she said, sipping her wine. "We challenge each other, support each other's dreams, and make decisions together. That is what marriage should be about, do not you think?" Her words hit me unexpectedly hard. I realized that Marcus and I never had those kinds of conversations. He never asked about my professional goals or challenged me intellectually. Our relationship revolved around his preferences, his schedule, his vision of our future. When had I stopped having opinions that mattered? As the evening progressed, Marcus gathered with a group of his male friends near the bar. They were all drinking heavily, their voices getting louder and their gestures more animated. I was across the room chatting with some relatives when I noticed Marcus holding court with his buddies, everyone laughing at something he was saying. Curious about what was so entertaining, I began moving closer to their group. The music and general party noise made it difficult to hear clearly from a distance, so I found myself positioning behind a decorative column that allowed me to listen without being obviously eavesdropping. At first I caught fragments of typical guy talk, sports work complaints, and jokes I did not quite understand. Marcus seemed to be the center of attention, which was not unusual since he loved being the entertainer in any group. I was about to move away when I heard him say something that made me freeze in place. "You guys want to know the secret to a perfect relationship?" Marcus was saying, his voice slightly slurred from the alcohol. "Find yourself a woman who is grateful. Really grateful." The group chuckled, and someone asked him to elaborate. What Marcus said next shattered my world completely. "I mean, look at Claire. She was struggling working some basic job, barely making rent. I swooped in and took care of everything. Now she has a beautiful apartment, a nice car, designer clothes, everything she could want. He pays my bills, follows me like a dog, and still thinks I love him." The group erupted in laughter. My blood ran cold as I realized he was talking about me using the gender-swapped version to mock me in front of his friends. The way he said it with such casual cruelty made it clear this was not a one-time comment, but his actual view of our relationship. "Dude, that is harsh," one of his friends said, but he was laughing as he said it. "It is not harsh, it is smart," Marcus continued. "She is so grateful for everything I provide that she never questions anything, never demands anything, never challenges me. It is like having a beautiful, well-trained pet who happens to be great in bed." I felt like I might vomit. 3 years of what I thought was love was actually just Marcus's ego trip. I was not his partner or even his girlfriend in any meaningful sense. I was his charity case, his proof of his own generosity and superiority. Standing there behind that column, listening to the man I was supposed to marry describe me as a grateful pet, I felt something inside me break and then immediately reshape into something harder and more determined. The hurt was overwhelming, but underneath it was a rage that gave me clarity I had not felt in years. I did not storm over there and create a scene. I did not scream or cry or make a dramatic exit that would give Marcus and his friends even more entertainment. Instead, I quietly walked to the coat check, retrieved my jacket and purse, and left the venue without speaking to a single person. A few guests asked if I was okay as I made my way to the exit. I smiled politely and said I needed some air, would be right back. But I knew I was never going back to that party, to that version of myself, or to Marcus. During the taxi ride home, my mind was crystal clear for the first time in months. I began planning, not just how to leave Marcus, but how to make him understand exactly what it felt like to lose something you took for granted. He thought I was so grateful, so dependent, so predictable. I was going to show him just how wrong he was. Back at our apartment, I changed out of the expensive dress Marcus had chosen and put on my own clothes. Then I sat on our couch and made a list of everything I needed to do. First priority was financial independence. I had some savings from before we met, money I had never touched because Marcus insisted on paying for everything. It was not much, but it was a start. When Marcus came home around 2 a.m., clearly drunk and confused about why I had disappeared, I was in bed pretending to sleep. He stumbled around the room, whispering my name and trying to wake me gently. I remained still, already beginning the emotional withdrawal that would define the next 30 days. "Baby, where did you go tonight? Everyone was asking about you," he whispered, climbing into bed beside me. I mumbled something about feeling sick and needing to come home early. He accepted this explanation easily, as he accepted most things that fit his narrative of me as his fragile, dependent partner. The next morning, Marcus left for work with his usual kiss on my forehead and reminder that he would pick up dinner on his way home. The moment his car left the driveway, I began executing my plan. My first stop was a bank across town where I opened a new checking account in only my name. I transferred my small savings there and set up direct deposit for my paycheck. Next, I visited a legal aid clinic to understand my rights regarding the apartment lease and our shared possessions. Since we were not married and most everything was in Marcus's name, the situation was simpler than I had feared. I spent the afternoon looking at studio apartments in my price range. They were small and basic compared to the luxury I had become accustomed to with Marcus, but they represented something infinitely more valuable: freedom. Over the following weeks, I began implementing what I privately called my 30-day plan. Every day, I became a little more distant, a little less available, a little less grateful. I stopped initiating physical affection and responded coolly when Marcus tried to be romantic. When he asked about my day, I gave brief, polite answers instead of the detailed stories he was used to hearing. I started going out alone, something I had not done in over a year. I would tell Marcus I was going to the gym or running errands and instead go to coffee shops where I would read or just think. Sometimes I would visit art galleries or take walks in parts of the city I had never explored. The change in my behavior was gradual enough that Marcus initially attributed it to pre-wedding stress or work pressure. He bought me flowers, planned romantic dinners, and suggested a couples massage weekend. I accepted these gestures politely, but without the enthusiasm he expected. Each time he tried harder to recapture my attention, I became more indifferent. By the second week of my plan, Marcus was clearly becoming concerned. He started asking direct questions about what was wrong, whether I was having second thoughts about the wedding, if there was something I needed to talk about. I would look at him with the same patient smile he used to give me when I had tried to contribute ideas he did not want to hear. "Nothing is wrong," I would say calmly. "Everything is fine." But everything was not fine, and Marcus knew it. The passionate, affectionate woman he thought he controlled was disappearing before his eyes, replaced by someone polite but unreachable. He began trying different strategies to win me back, not understanding that he had never really had me in the way he thought. Marcus started coming home with expensive gifts, jewelry, and designer handbags that he presented with the expectation of grateful enthusiasm. I would thank him nicely and put them away without much reaction. The lack of the grateful response he was accustomed to clearly frustrated him, though he tried to hide it. He planned elaborate surprise dates, taking me to expensive restaurants and shows that were designed to impress me back into submission. During these evenings, I would be pleasant company but emotionally absent. I would order carefully from the menu, thank him for the lovely evening, and remain completely unmoved by his efforts. The physical intimacy between us came to a complete halt. When Marcus tried to initiate sex, I would claim to be tired or not feeling well. When he attempted casual affection, holding my hand or putting his arm around me, I would not pull away, but I would not respond either. I became like a polite stranger living in his house. By week 3, Marcus was becoming desperate. He started taking time off work to spend with me, suggesting spontaneous trips and activities. He would watch me carefully, trying to read my expressions and figure out what he had done wrong. The control freak who had managed every aspect of our relationship was completely lost when faced with someone he could not manipulate. He began checking my phone when he thought I was not looking, going through my purse, and even asking mutual acquaintances if I had said anything to them about our relationship. He found nothing because there was nothing to find. I was not cheating or planning anything dramatic. I was simply becoming unavailable to him emotionally. The most telling moment came during week 4 when Marcus broke down crying one evening, begging me to tell him what he had done wrong. He promised to change, to be better, to give me anything I wanted. The irony was profound. The man who had never asked what I wanted was now desperately offering to provide it, but only because he was losing control. I watched his tears with complete calm. This was the same man who had described me as a grateful pet to his friends while laughing. Now he was the one begging, the one desperate for affection and validation. But unlike him, I felt no pleasure in his pain. I just felt free. On the 30th day, I had everything arranged. My new apartment was ready, my belongings were secretly packed in boxes at a storage unit, and my financial accounts were completely separate. I had even found a new job at a different company starting the following Monday. When Marcus left for work that morning, he kissed me goodbye with an intensity that bordered on panic. He seemed to sense that something definitive was coming, though he could not have imagined what. I spent the day moving my personal items to my new place. By the time Marcus came home that evening, the apartment looked exactly the same, except for the absence of things that were truly mine. He would probably not notice for days that my books were gone, my personal photos removed, my favorite coffee mug missing from the cabinet. Marcus walked in carrying flowers and wearing the hopeful expression that had become his default over the past month. He found me sitting at the kitchen table with 2 cups of coffee, looking serene and composed. "We need to talk," I said simply. He sat down across from me, his face immediately shifting to alarm. "Claire, whatever is wrong, we can fix it. Just tell me what you need." I looked at him for a long moment, this man who thought he knew me so well, who had controlled my life for 3 years, while believing I was grateful for the privilege. "I know exactly what you think of me, Marcus," I said quietly. "I know about your little speech at our engagement party, about how I follow you like a dog, how grateful I am that you pay my bills, how I still think you love me." The color drained from his face completely. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. "I heard every word," I continued, "about how I am like a well-trained pet who happens to be great in bed, about how you swooped in to save some struggling girl who was barely making rent." Marcus was shaking his head, trying to find words to deny or explain, but I held up my hand to stop him. "I am not angry anymore," I said, and I meant it. "I was devastated at first, but then I realized you gave me the most valuable gift anyone has ever given me. You showed me exactly who you are, and exactly who I never want to be again." I stood up from the table and walked to the counter where I had left my keys and a letter. "I have moved out," I said simply. "My portion of this month's rent is on the counter, along with keys and a forwarding address for anything official. I am not interested in talking this through or working it out or staying friends. I am just done." Marcus finally found his voice. "Claire, please. That night I was drunk, I was showing off. It did not mean anything. You know I love you." I looked at him with genuine pity. "No, Marcus. You love having someone who makes you feel important and generous and in control. You love having a beautiful accessory who asks for nothing and appreciates everything. But you do not love me because you never bothered to actually know me." As I walked toward the door, Marcus jumped up and followed me, his voice breaking as he pleaded, "I can change. I will be different. Just give me a chance to show you." I turned back one last time. "You cannot change what you fundamentally believe about relationships and about women. And I cannot change the fact that I now know exactly how little you think of me. Some things cannot be fixed, Marcus. They can only be walked away from." And with that, I left. No slamming doors, no dramatic declarations, no promises of revenge. I simply walked out of his life the same way I had walked out of that engagement party 30 days earlier, with quiet dignity and absolute certainty. The first few months of my new life were challenging in ways I had not experienced in years. My studio apartment was tiny compared to Marcus's luxury condo. I had to budget carefully, cook my own meals, and manage every aspect of my life without someone else handling the details. And it was absolutely wonderful. I rediscovered parts of myself that had been dormant for 3 years. I remembered that I actually enjoyed cooking when I could choose my own recipes. I found out that I was quite good at managing my finances when given the chance. I realized that I had opinions about decorating, about weekend activities, about everything from movies to restaurants to vacation destinations. My new job was at a smaller firm where my ideas were actually valued. For the first time in years, I was having meaningful conversations about my career goals, my professional development, and my long-term ambitions. I had forgotten how good it felt to be seen as capable and intelligent rather than just grateful and beautiful. I made new friends, women like Jessica, who had their own careers and interests, and who respected themselves enough to demand equal partnerships. We would have long conversations about everything from politics to philosophy, discussions that challenged me and helped me grow in ways I had not realized I was missing. Marcus tried to contact me numerous times in those first months. He sent flowers to my office, left voicemails promising to change, even showed up at my apartment building once. But I had learned something valuable about boundaries, and I maintained them consistently. Each time he tried to reestablish contact, I documented it, but did not respond. Eventually, he stopped trying. 6 months after I left, I ran into one of Marcus's friends at a coffee shop downtown. He recognized me and came over to say hello, mentioning that Marcus had been really torn up about our breakup and was still hoping we might work things out. "He says it was all a big misunderstanding," the friend told me. "That you took something out of context and never gave him a chance to explain." I smiled politely and said nothing, but internally, I marveled at Marcus's ability to rewrite history. Even after everything, he could not accept that his own words had revealed his true character. He needed to believe that I had misunderstood rather than understood perfectly. The most profound change in my new life was learning to trust my own instincts again. For 3 years, I had deferred to Marcus's judgment on everything from major decisions to daily preferences. I had convinced myself that his experience and confidence made him better qualified to make choices for both of us. Now I was remembering that I was perfectly capable of deciding what I wanted for dinner, how to spend my weekend, and what direction to take my career. I also learned to recognize the red flags I had missed with Marcus. The way he had isolated me from friends was not protective, it was controlling. His insistence on paying for everything was not generous, it was a way to maintain power. His constant praise of my gratitude and compliance was not appreciation, it was conditioning. A year after leaving Marcus, I met David at a professional development workshop. He was intelligent, funny, and respectful in ways that felt completely natural rather than performed. Our first few conversations were about work, about industry trends, about books we had both read. He asked about my opinions and actually listened to my answers. When he invited me for coffee, It was because he enjoyed talking with me, not because he wanted to rescue or impress me. Our relationship developed slowly and equally. We split checks, made decisions together, and maintained our individual friendships and interests. David supported my career ambitions the same way I supported his. He introduced me to his friends as someone whose work he respected, whose perspectives he valued, whose company he genuinely enjoyed. What struck me most about being with David was how effortless it felt to be myself. I did not have to perform gratitude or submission. I did not have to pretend my opinions mattered less than his. I could disagree with him about movies or politics or weekend plans without it threatening the foundation of our relationship. Sometimes I think about what my life would have been like if I had never overheard Marcus's conversation that night. Would I have married him? Would I have spent years in a relationship where I was essentially a well-cared-for dependent rather than an equal partner? The thought makes me genuinely grateful for that moment of devastating clarity. I learned that being alone is infinitely better than being with someone who sees you as less than you are. I learned that financial security means nothing if it comes at the cost of your self-respect. Most importantly, I learned that love without respect is not love at all. It is just another form of control dressed up in pretty gestures and expensive gifts. Marcus taught me without meaning to that my worth is not determined by someone else's willingness to provide for me. My value does not come from being grateful or compliant or beautiful enough to earn someone's protection. I am worthy of love and respect simply because I exist, not because I make someone else feel important or generous or powerful. The woman who walked out of that engagement party was not the same woman who walked into it. She was someone who had learned to value herself enough to walk away from anything that diminished her. She was someone who understood that true partnership requires equality, that real love demands respect, and that some betrayals are actually gifts in disguise. I hope that sharing my story encourages anyone who is in a similar situation to trust their instincts and value themselves enough to demand better. You deserve to be loved for who you are, not for how grateful you are to receive that love. Now, I would love to hear from you. Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted saw you completely differently than you thought? How did you handle a situation where you realized you were being taken for granted? Share your experiences in the comments below because your story might help someone else recognize their own worth. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life experiences. And do not forget to share this video with anyone who might need to hear this message about knowing your worth and never settling for less than you deserve. Thank you for listening, and remember that you are worthy of genuine love and respect exactly as you are. I wish you all the courage to demand the love you truly deserve.